On Thursday Night Football, we watched as the Chicago Bears, led by Justin Fields, walked into FedEx Field and completely embarrassed the Washington Commanders on their home grass. Justin Fields was dicing up the secondary. DJ Moore looked absolutely unstoppable, and this Bears offensive line, which has struggled this year, gave Justin Fields all day to throw. And after such an embarrassing loss, I think it's time we start asking questions of Ron Rivera and why is he still the head coach of this organization and what is he even doing here? Hi, I'm Nathan from the Three-Handed Bandits, and today I'm going to be discussing why I think it is time for the Washington Commanders to move on from Ron Rivera. Before we get into all of that, though, please go ahead and like and subscribe and share this video with somebody you care about. And go ahead and comment down below where you agree with me. Where am I wrong? Am I overreacting? Just go ahead and let me know your thoughts of this video down below. So as I said, what is Ron Rivera actually doing here? You know, he's supposed to be one of these defensive minds. He's one of these defensive-minded coaches. However, his defense hasn't been very good. And in my opinion, you know, these coaches, when you're sided to one side of the ball, if your side of the ball as a head coach isn't doing good and in fact is hurting your team extremely, then questions need to be asked of you and what type of job you're doing. So not only has this defense actively been hurting this Washington Commanders team, but this isn't some well-coached defense. This isn't some well-coached team. And, you know, the overall, you know, culture isn't great here either. So if you're not bringing great defense, you're not bringing great coaching, you're not bringing great culture, what are you still doing here? And so Ron Rivera really likes to do a lot of the quarters style stuff on defense, whether that's, you know, cover six with the quarter half, whether it's, you know, a true cover four, whether it's just a, you know, regular cover two. He really likes to have, you know, this two high shell, have some rotating safeties, and, you know, really, you know, play some off coverage and, you know, rush four and get after the quarterback and hopefully stop that. However, as we've seen the last couple of years, this quarter scheme is being figured out and being exploited across the league. You know, if you look across the league, some of the worst defenses in the NFL the last couple of years have been the Vikings with Ed Donatel, have been the Packers with Joe Barry, have been the Browns with Joe Woods, and, you know, the Chargers with Brandon Staley. You know, this scheme is just kind of starting to get picked on across the league, especially when you have all this predictable coverage. You're also just not blitzing or doing a whole lot of stunts either. And so when you're rushing four straight up, it's hard to win like that on the defensive line. And you need to have great communication and, you know, great instincts to play this. And this team just doesn't have it, whether it's, you know, all on coaching or some of it's on talent. I think there could be a little bit of both. But, you know, this isn't a well coached defense, and they've really been struggling. You know, not only are they allowing 32 points per game, which is 31st in the league, you know, second to last behind only the Denver Broncos, who allowed 70 points in a game. But they're also allowing 370 yards per game, which is, you know, 25th worst in the league. They have a third down conversion rate of 20th. So teams are converting on third down at a decent level against them. And they have a -5 turnover margin, which is 28th in the league. So not only are they allowing a lot of points, they're allowing a lot of yards, they're not getting stops on third down, and they're not getting turnovers. So what are we doing? You know, in defense, you need to be making stops on third down, getting turnovers, you know, not allowing points, and they're not doing any of those things. And so I think it's time to start asking questions of why Ron Rivera is still here. And, you know, even if you look at his track record, it hasn't been great. You know, so far in his 3 years here, he has had a 500 record at best. You know, his first year, they went 7-9 and made the playoffs when the NFC East was miserable that year. Then the next year, got one loss worse and went 7-10. And then even last year, you know, they went 8-1, finished 500. But when you look at their schedule, they beat the Chicago Bears, who had the first overall pick. They beat the Houston Texans, led by Davis Mills, who had the second overall pick. They beat the Marcus Mariota-led Falcons, who finished with the 8th overall pick. They beat the Sam Ehlinger-led Colts, who finished with the 4th overall pick. So half your wins came from, you know, 4 of the bottom 8 teams in the NFL. And, that's not including a win against week 1 uh, for the Jacksonville Jaguars in their new regime, and a week 18 win against the Cowboys when they had already locked up the playoffs. So 6 wins, were not necessarily great wins. You know what I mean? Not every win is created equal. And now they're 2-3, and they have an extremely difficult schedule up ahead of them. When you look at their schedule and the games they have remaining, they have to go against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have to go to Seattle. They have to go against Dallas twice. They have to go against the Miami Dolphins. They have to go to the LA Rams. And then they have to face San Francisco as well. So do we really expect this poor defense to play better against these teams? I don't. I would be surprised if they, have, great outings against a lot of these teams. And, talking about their schedule, some of the other games they have to go against, they have to go against Atlanta, who's had good offense at times. They have to go against the Giants twice, who, were a playoff team last year, has really been struggling this year. But they also have to go to New England and have to go against the New York Jets. So do we see a whole lot of wins for this team this season? Because I don't. I would be surprised if they really win any of these games. And even the games that I didn't mention or I don't have on the graphic right now, none of them are necessarily easy games either. So at what point do we decide to move on from Ron Rivera? Do we wait till we're 2-7? Do we try to squeak it out and see if we can find a way to make the playoffs? To me, that would be silly. With Sam Howell and this schedule up ahead, there's no way you make the playoffs. So what's the point of keeping Ron Rivera here? He's clearly not our coach of the future. Why are we wasting our time? We're not having great defense. We don't have a great culture. And I just don't think we have a shot of making the playoffs or winning a whole lot of games, or, the thought of a Super Bowl is crazy to me. So what are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing with Ron Rivera as our head coach? So instead of being just pessimistic and saying why things can't work, I'm going to go and give you a suggestion on how I would fix things if I was the Commanders' ownership. And so the first thing I think we do is just move on from Ron Rivera. It's clearly not working. We're not going anywhere fast. So what's the point of keeping him here? I think we bring in Eric Bieniemy for a reason. I think that was a great hiring. And it's kind of, to me, giving him a test run to see if he will end up being our head coach. Because if he ends up being a great offensive mind and this offense has looked pretty good, someone is going to swoop him up. And so he was clearly trying to prove that he's a good coach outside of, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's doing a good job of proving that so far. So let's give him the chance to prove to us that he could be our head coach. And so I think we should move on from Ron Rivera and make Eric Bieniemy our interim head coach. Let's see how he game plans, throughout the week as the head coach. Let's see how he manages games. Let's see how he handles tough losses and how this culture is under Eric Bieniemy. Let's give him the keys and let's see what we have here. It's like when you have a young quarterback, give him a chance to play. Let's see if we have something here. Let's see if Eric Bieniemy could be our head coach. And while we're doing that, let's bottom out. Let's try to lose games. Obviously, I still want our offense to look good and I want us to be competitive, but let's just lose some games. We already have a tough schedule up ahead, and I don't think Sam Howell is going to be an elite quarterback. So let's really try to bottom out, lose games, and let's aim to get Caleb Williams. Give us an option at quarterback that we can get really excited about. Give us a chance at having our own elite quarterback in the building. And, worst case, if we think Eric Bieniemy fails and does a horrible job as an interim head coach, well, then let's find a great young offensive-minded coach. There's a couple of guys in the pipeline that I think would be really enticed to come here if you tell them that, hey, we have a shot at getting Caleb Williams. And so we got Shane Waldron over in Seattle. We got Ben Johnson over in Detroit. Got Kellen Moore over in LA. So I think those are 3 really exciting young minds that would be tempted to come here, would be great coaches here, especially if you dangle Caleb Williams in front of them. And, even if we decide we want to, keep a defensive-minded head coach, well, let's try to get someone like Ejiro Evero, who's done an excellent job with Denver and Carolina the last 2 years. So at least we're going to have this defensive mind. Let's at least have a really good defensive mind in Ejiro Evero. And, even if we're not able to get one of those four guys, there's still some other exciting options like Frank Smith, Ken Dorsey, Press Taylor, and Jim Bob Cooter. So overall, I feel like there's a way where we can have a higher upside, heading into next year, but there's also a way where we can just have a much safer floor. So, what I think is going to end up happening is at some point, Jack Del Rio or, you know, someone else is going to end up being the fall guy. It's probably going to be Jack Del Rio. But overall, I think it's time to move on from Ron Rivera. And to me, I would just start that process already. I think we are pretty sure he's not the guy. So let's give Eric Bieniemy, the person who we think could be the guy, let's give him a chance and see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, there's other options. And if we have Cale Williams and Ben Johnson next year, we're going to be feeling a lot better about this team than when it's coached by Ron Rivera. So overall, that is my pitch. I think it's time to move on from Ron Rivera. I think sooner rather than later. We're wasting daylight. Let's kind of just get on with it. And I think there's a route where we can have a much better team, heading into next year. Like, I don't want to be a team that's just, you know, 500 every single year. I want to be a team that's competing to win a Super Bowl, especially when you're a team like the Commanders, who has a history of winning. So overall, that is my pitch. If you stuck around for this long, please go ahead and like and subscribe and let me know what you thought of my thoughts on this team. If you stuck around for this long, thank you very much for watching.